So we've just finished up our 3-week founder house a couple of days ago. René, how are you feeling in the aftermath of this epic experience?
Really good. It was exciting to start something totally new after we've done quite a few quote unquote normal retreats now, to come up with a new product, so to speak, that we thought is really something our clients want and need. And I think we can say with certainty that it landed well and that everybody's feeling really good now. So very happy about that.
Yeah, feels really good to be done and a bit strange because we kind of had this epic routine over the last 3 weeks with this group of guys where we kind of planned out the day in a sense, particularly the mornings and afternoons. And I almost feel like we got into that groove of going through the process with them. Like, of course, for them, there was a lot of deep insights and transformations and stuff, but even just like the kind of the space that's created for community, brotherhood, and also the training and fitness and this like kind of regular meal times with really good food and all that kind of thing. Like, it's really, I kind of miss it, to be honest. Kind of like, can we go back?
You are definitely also in better shape than when we started.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah. Kind of rubbed off on me a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess today we're going to dive into a little bit of like what happened and like what is the founder house, what does that include, who are the kind of people who come to that, and some of what that entails, as well as our experience of that, and also some of the lessons and insights we're taking away, because there's definitely a few. We had 3 weeks with a group of amazing guys, amazing founders, and it was juicy to say the least. So we've got lots to talk about.
Let's go.
And if you're listening to this, then you're hopefully going to get some insight into what it's like to, go behind the scenes at a 15K retreat on the other side of the world. And maybe it will inspire you and you might have some insights that meant you didn't have to fly all the way to Asia to experience them. You get them for free listening at home, which is nice.
I hope people are not stop listening now after they heard 15K. Don't worry, it's going to be worth it. You will understand.
But you'll only make special price. So let's start with like what is the Founder House? And I think in order to explain this, we need to talk about how this was born. So we'll set the scene. We were driving from Berlin to the complete opposite corner of Germany.
Freiburg area.
Yeah. So right down in the southwest corner of Germany. So it was about a 9-hour drive or so. And we had a lot of time to think and talk in the car.
You actually asked me the question, if I would put a gun to your head and you have to make 1 million euros this year, what new ideas would you come up with?
That's a good question.
And
Fuck.
that's how it started, yeah.
And so what was the idea? The idea was basically, how can we take a group of great guys and stick them in a house and have everything like really personalized and catered for them, both in terms of like lifestyle, enjoyment, spending time together with a great group of guys, but then space for business and like co-working, masterminding, as well as fitness, as well as clean eating and like new physical experiences, as well as then deep personal development work, breath work, kind of the full gamut, the full picture.
Yeah, maybe to quickly reverse engineer it, it's basically, that was the question you asked, and I thought, okay, it should be something that costs a bit more than the usual products, but also it has to be something that is really worth it for the guys. So obviously we need to add something to the experience. And then we were, I think, thinking about also the future of our business, like what do we enjoy to do? What would we love to bring into the world? Not only, making bigger revenue, but actually enjoying it. And then just looking at all of our clients, what do they all have in common? What do they all love to do? Where they all have the challenges? And how can we create something that caters to all of the things I just said? And that's kind of why this 3-week thing came out, because it's not very usual. Everybody I tell about this says, what, 3-week retreat? Never heard about that. And so, it's kind of a new thing. And I think the concept is proven and we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, it was one of those things, I think, for me as well, of if I could design the perfect personal development experience, what would that need to entail? Now, we've been running the 1-week retreats or even a 10-day retreat sometimes for the past 3 years. And those are really epic and powerful from like a going deep. Everyone's there, they're fully present, it's phones off, it's like really focused on the depth of personal development. And usually within that week, people bond really quick and go deep very fast together. So with the 3 week experience, I think what it allows that's different from the regular retreat is there's more space and time. So there's less need to like dive in every day for 10 hours. It's more of like 3 hours a day, very integrated, very balanced, and lots of other activities around it. So we'll get to how the results were after, but I think in terms of like how I see typically people's personal development journeys going, the longer time for integration that there is, the better, which is why combining all these different elements is such a, holistic transformation that's created. So all in all, the Founder House, I would describe it as like a very unique live-in retreat experience for founders and entrepreneurs, or just any man who's a high performer. Of course, it favors those who have the capacity to work remotely or digitally, which is a lot of people these days, obviously. And, for people who want to, maybe they've already grinded and worked hard and they want to still continue to be in business or in collaboration with others, but then at the same time, really having this great quality of life, and while also kind of up leveling in each area of their life.
Yeah.
So part of our experience of spending some time in Asia over the past years has been, getting to experience that, getting to have this balance of like doing some work on the laptop, going to a great social wellness gym and having this like sauna, ice bath, high quality
Yeah,
gym.
it's not even like people usually.
It's like a hotel.
It's not really a gym. It's like you can hang out for the entire day. It's super modern. You have biohacking stuff there. You have a big swimming pool, different saunas, different temperature ice bath, modern gym, restaurant where you can pick exactly the ingredients you want to have on the plate, with like calories, nutritional facts listed on the menu. Like, so everything is optimized for getting in the best shape and being relaxed. And you have a great community of people there. Every day, if you go to the sauna, you want to meet somebody to talk to, have interesting conversation, or meet another founder for some networking. You can do that. Everybody's totally open to speak to you.
Totally. And that's been kind of at least my lived experience of being here in Asia for a couple of years, is like, I kind of get used to it and I forget that there's very different ways of living. So
yeah,
I think the desire also came from, hey, we're almost like kind of locals here. It feels like, or at least we have the inside scoop. What would it be like to introduce a group of people and have all those connects and all those like secret hacks and secret villas and all those kind of things that we can actually share and bring through, like the best practitioners that I've collected over kind of 6 years of trying everything, the best, private chefs and that kind of thing. So how can we bring all of those things together to really create an amazing residential experience for a group of guys who want to work on themselves, but also want to enjoy life and enjoy the success they've been building as they prepare for the next chapter, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Just one thing in this kind of starting phase that is worth mentioning, I think, and like other reasons that were important as well, why we created this experience here in Asia at this time of the year in the winter, is simply because so many of the guys said that anyways they want to go away in winter. When we had the retreat last year, it was 10-day retreat. Most people stayed longer because it's a long trip. The time difference is great. We're 7 hours ahead, so basically Germany, before 1 or 2 p.m. you will get no messages on your phone, so the entire morning is basically to yourself. You can enjoy without feeling guilty, and then in the evening you still have opportunity to work. So basically that's just a few other extras that just work to escape the winter, be in a warm place, and have a little bit of bought time in the morning.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the kind of pillars or the ethos of the Founder House. So we kind of looked at when we were creating this experience on our 9-hour car drive to Freiburg, there was an element of like, what would we need to put in to make that amazing? What are the elements we want to include? And this idea of like the 4 pillars, which is the physical, the mental, the emotional, and spiritual. So the physical element, of course, being, working on your physical body. I think if someone doesn't feel good, or they're feeling like stressed, burnt out, or, exhausted, or just kind of like slow or heavy, I think one of the best things they can do is get moving, and so most of the guys that we work with typically tend to have some kind of relationship with physical fitness and doing sport, and they kind of know that that's good, but it's often something that's put on the side, especially in busy times with stressful times in business, which is actually time they need it the most. So creating a really solid foundation and routine around physical fitness, both in terms of the yang side of things, like the activity, be it from like, the personal trainer going to the gym with them and personalized programs for like their specific goals, as well as like fun physical activity like the paddle, playing different sports every day, and then balancing that with the yin. So, having the body work and the massage in the villa, and the breath work obviously great as well for relaxing the body and accessing that deep like rest and parasympathetic. So kind of allowing people to really expand on a physical level, and the guys, in this case, really got in good shape.
Yeah.
And while also feeling more grounded and relaxed than before.
Yeah. And also, like, I think what is great as well, we left, there was enough program, but also enough free space. And we started the days early with sunrise, basically 6:30 with a morning practice, a little breathing exercise together, or a little meditation, some breakfast, went to gym. And before guys came here, I knew that some of them they said, oh, I'm not a morning person. It's going to be so tough for me to wake up. So the first few days was like a little bit more difficult to get into it. And now they just, like, some of them are still here. They're just waking up early, full of energy, gym right away, feeling at the peak. Like it just takes a few days to interrupt that pattern, and suddenly it just feels great. And it was like also, I think, this group dynamic, everybody showing up at 6:30 together, right? We're in this together, and just kind of having right away this good social connection, interaction, just got the day started in a really good way.
Yeah, totally. I would say the next pillar would be the mental pillar. So both in terms of the personal development program and then also the masterminds and the different business elements. What I think was really important to create in this experience was opportunities for, deeper reflection and insight in terms of like behavior patterns or things we notice, or like the voices in the head that might impact us that wouldn't be recognized or noticed in a day-to-day basis because they're so normal. But by removing from your typical life and getting the chance to be, immersed in nature and in this great place and this beautiful lifestyle, we kind of get to see those things in isolation and start to look at them and work with them differently. And I think the second element to that is like all of the guys that we worked with, some of them are like, pre-exit, they're like building a business, but like quite successful, but still on the up and on the moonshot, and then others have already had exits and had success. And so being able to bring those guys together and do masterminds like every week, and to have that sharing of ideas and insights and experience was also super valuable on a mental side. So I think some of the guys got some really powerful insights around, the next chapter of how to structure their business, or like even there was like a shareholder structure conversation and like how to deal with different challenges in a business front. And I think that really kind of left them, like we'll say, mentally feeling like whole and complete, we'll say.
Yeah, I think it's also one thing to mention here is that some of the guys say usually it's very difficult for them when they go on holidays, for example, to really relax, especially the first few days. Some say it takes me a week until I can finally relax and calm down a little. And I think this is a perfect mix because it kind of still feels like productiveness because it's growth in many different levels. So it feels safe to go on that. It's not really a holiday, but to come here, while at the same time there's a lot of personal growth, emotional growth, nervous system regulation, and they actually leave with much better energy and more relaxed. But it's kind of like hidden behind, hey, you're still being productive. So the nervous system almost allows them to do that more rather than just laying at the beach. And yeah, I think that is something that was important. Also seeing the other guys who are also ambitious, driven guys doing the same, and like, oh, it's okay. They're also chilling sometimes. So we're in this together, and it's okay.
Yeah, totally. And I think that group effect is really important as well, as you said, because even for the guys that maybe are still in the like building phase, it's very easy, I think, when you're a solo wolf to kind of always believe that I need to be constantly on 14 hours a day. And so being able to see guys who sure maybe are a bit further ahead, but also have more openness to, more balance and stuff. Maybe in the past they would have also hustled, but like, I think it starts to like show that there's a different way available. As you said, for these kind of high performers and these guys who come from this like really hustle approach and mindset, a typical holiday isn't going to cut it. Going and hanging out at the beach isn't going to do it because they have trained their system to be on. So if you remove stimulus, it's not going to be a good time. It's going to be very challenging. And there will be a lot of stuff, we'll say voices in the head coming alive, and guilt, and probably then trying to work in an environment that doesn't support it. Like you're sitting in Mallorca by the pool trying to take a business meeting on Zoom when actually it's not set up for that. The environment isn't made for that. So we really wanted to create an environment for our guys that they can co-work, they can do calls, they can still have like their business topics moving. Now, it's not like it was a hacker house, like a massive building phase or something, but it allowed those things to tick over, which again quietens the mind and gives space for like more freedom to enjoy the rest of the things, because that business topic is kind of ticked, at least on maintenance mode. So physically, we do sport and activities to calm the body, which allows us to mentally also calm the mind. And that then gives way to the third pillar, which is emotions. So emotions are always a fun topic around high performers, because they're often seen as quite, anything from unproductive to unmanly. And yet, what we see time and time again from some of our, top guys is the deeper that they allow themselves to go into the exploration of their emotions, the deeper their, we'll say, positivity, peace, contentment, joy, happiness, fulfillment starts to just come through and radiate from them. And that's why one of the main pillars of this experience is the emotional part. And that's what we explore in our kind of personal development segments, and also the breathwork, of course. So every person, we said we want to make sure we set this up in a way that everyone gets like a lot of time with the ability to really feel things on a deeper level. Sure, we can be rational and we can understand things, but how do we really drop into the body and move it and process it? Because I think one journey or one session of processing emotions is worth like 15 in therapy or coaching, in terms of the level of actual foundational change and shift that happens when we really tap into the core emotion. It's worlds apart. And I think until you've experienced that, it's very hard to describe. But I would say it's like the Autobahn. If you want to get to the core and to the depth and to really who you are, then you need to include some breath work or some kind of other body-based practice. So we set that up with 3 breathwork group journeys a week, and also the one-on-ones with yourself as well. As really like there's nothing getting through the cracks. Like there's plenty of opportunity to dive in.
Yeah. I want to also look at it from the perspective of somebody listening now, because I'm doing most of the introduction conversations with people who come to us in the first place, and I always hear like doubts, fears, reasons they come to us. And now you very excitingly shared about the emotional topic, how important it is, how good it is. And we know that because we have seen it time and time again in the retreats, and also how well it lands with everybody. But there's actually probably some of you listening thinking, that sounds scary. Emotions, showing emotions, sharing emotions with other people. Particularly the next thing is sharing emotions in front of guys who already did an exit. Because some guys said, I would love to come to your retreat, but I don't think I'm good enough to come because I'm not that successful yet, even though they're really successful guys. But then they think, oh, this is going to be some kind of, we're going to measure who's like better into the competition, how it's maybe on some business dinners in a city. But it's like not like that at all. But I think you need to experience it or talk to somebody who has been through it to really understand, because actually it's so little talk about who achieved what within our retreats. Everybody is just humans, friends, and
barely even know they had a company kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like, it sometimes comes up, but there's no like competing or I'm better, ego, more successful, not at all. So just want to say to those who are on the journey, you're not successful enough. And on the flip side, even, it's a great opportunity maybe to get some mentorship, to get, I don't know, somebody who invests in your business,
Yeah, totally.
It's happened before on the retreats.
We've had it a couple of times where, you spend 1 week, 3 weeks really getting to know someone on a human level. All the masks and the personas are down. Who are they going to trust? Who are you going to trust? It's like they're the real relationships. And anyone who's like these old school business guys, they're going to invite you around to their house for dinner with their wife and their kids, and then talk business after. It's like that's kind of the way it is traditionally,
Yeah.
So I think there's space for that. Not that you should come with that as your primary goal, but I think it's something that without that attachment, there actually can be like ideas and collaborations and creativity that flows from a place of like not needing anything.
Yeah.
You know, because no one's there specifically for that, but from that place and from that shared depth and the shared humanity, there can be, of course, commerce that emerges from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, feel your emotions and you might get your next round of investment done.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got physical, we've got mental and emotional. And once we take off all of them, we leave room for the last little gem, which is the spiritual element. Now, we've been...
The one the guys are afraid of the most.
Yeah. Run and hide. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
The thing that a lot of people say about us, and I think it's a pretty good compliment actually, is the way we approach this is, you know, sure, we can bring people to spiritual places around the world or spend time in beautiful locations in nature. That's kind of like one of our cornerstones of our retreats and our experiences. But we're really bringing in this, like we'll say, whatever you want to call it, spiritual component, in a way that's very grounded and in a way that's not too confrontational or woo-woo or it's going to scare anyone away. It's kind of like it's there, it exists. If you want, take it or leave it, you know, and choose your adventure. That's kind of the way we would see the spiritual element. And a lot of times we have these check-ins every morning where the guys share about how they're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally, and it gets to the spiritual part and they're like, spiritually, I don't know.
Yeah, even I, after all these years, sometimes struggle. It's a different animal. But I think that's actually one of our biggest pillars of success is that we have found that sweet spot where we are not too esoteric. We still have fun. We still talk some shit sometimes. And it's not like all light and, you know, walking around with no shoes, growing long hair. It's not like that.
I hate shoes though, in fairness.
Yeah. In Bali, it's okay. And we don't have to sell that either or make it a spiritual experience in the way we approach it. When we talk to somebody, if they want to join, it's naturally going to be a place where they have their own experience with it. And it's not a big part of what we do, but it's a nice little addition to a good life they already have that will help them to enjoy things a bit more, to stress a little less. It's just a good addition to life. It's a piece of the cake, but it shouldn't be the whole cake.
Totally. And I think one of the great things I love about connected breathwork specifically as a tool is you can again choose your adventure. That there's people who go in and they get very physical journeys with, like, you know, muscle openings. Other people have like...
Well, please elaborate on muscle openings.
Muscle
I don't think many people know what that means.
As in there's tension or tightness in the body, and then through the journey you can kind of like let go of tension and release.
So it's not like the skin is ripping off and the muscles come out.
That sounds extreme. I probably wouldn't do that. Then there can be like mental downloads or insights. There can be like emotions like gratitude, or even like, you know, frustration or stuff can come to the surface, grief to be processed and let go. But then there's space for something else at the end, which is a feeling of spirituality as like connection to maybe God or spirit or universe or something, or they go to church.
Nature,
exactly. I would see it as connection to self and connection to something bigger than that. So without getting, as I said, too deep on it, let's be honest, we're all kind of here having a life experience and we get to choose our adventure in that. And part of that, I think, that we like to tap into the journeys in the retreats is, what's my relationship to myself? And am I really in touch with and in connection with my kind of true self? So the way I would describe the true self is that part of me, which is like the inner compass, the inner metal detector, the one that is subtly showing me the way. And if you're listening to this and you've had times in your life where you've just felt like an impulse or a gut feeling, you could call it a calling or a sign. Ooh. To do something and it's worked out. It could be meeting your partner. It could be like first time you had the impulse to go to that coffee shop and you met that great friend who you still know now, or things like that, where we kind of look back at these coincidences and say like, there was something about that. I felt something there. And I think that on a very, you know, non-explanatory, non-cognitive way, there's a certain energy that can pull us when we tap into it. And I think that most entrepreneurs and founders know that, because you could say like business is a science, but it's really an art. It's the art of tapping into my impulse. And if you're the leader of a company, you need to be able to follow that. And if you're successful, then it's probably at play, whether you like it or not. So I think the more access we have to that part of us, to that deeper, you could call it true self or that spiritual part of us, the more we can live from that place in every area, like be it in business and like being able to follow a path in business that feels more and more energizing and makes you feel more alive the more you do it. So it could be, you know, previously you did something that was purely functional to make a lot of money and you were great. And now what's next? Well, without tapping into that like deeper true self or the spiritual component, I think it's very hard to rationalize yourself to the next mountain. It needs to be more of a spiritual journey. So part of that thing that we do with people on the retreats is helping them find that inner compass again, which maybe like it's always been there, but maybe they just got a bit disconnected. And what we tend to find is all of the next steps which they were trying to logically and rationally figure out, and maybe even doing business coachings and masterminds and stuff to try and understand, it's actually much simpler and much deeper than that. And once we access that, it's not just like figure out this next problem and then you got to go back to the drawing board. It's like a long-term, almost guaranteed signpost of every direction you will need to take if you can tap into that and live from that. And that's probably the most fulfilling thing, I think, from the retreats that I've seen, and particularly this one over the last 3 weeks. When we see guys start to access that and it comes online and it just feels so good and you can see their face change and their energy lighten, and it's almost like there's a load taken off the shoulders and there's a clarity. Not to say that it's easy, not to say that they now just go and like make a bunch of calls and their life changes. They still have to take the very human steps to go through, you know, talk to that person, close that business, do this thing. But there's a deeper knowing that guides them. I think a lot of guys go through life looking for that, you know, sign. Am I doing the right thing here? Am I doing a good job? And we start to just give that to ourselves at some point when we have that connection to ourselves. So for me, that is the spiritual part, you know, take from it what you will.
Yeah, this feeling of hope, peace, this, like, many guys describe it as, I had this feeling at the end of the breathwork session, for example, that just everything's going to be okay. And I think that sounds like not a huge thing, but especially for many founders, it's huge because there's constant pressure that they put on themselves. There's constant worry. What if the next challenge comes up? Did I think about everything? And just having this feeling of, it's okay. Even if I fail, I'm okay with myself.
Every little thing is going to be all right.
Yeah, but it's just, it's just this, as you say, connection to self, feeling of peace and real confidence. Like, not, it's this confidence coaches, you should act like this, do like this, and learn how to be confident, appear to be confident. But what often I noticed, like after retreats and stuff, when then guys said certain dating or relationship experiences wouldn't trigger them as much anymore, certain outcomes with the business wouldn't trigger them not as much anymore, because there was this deeper feeling of everything is going to be okay. Even if somebody doesn't like me, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. Even if I fail in this, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. And I think if you're in a bad place and your nervous system is on overload and you're already anxious, then the outside world looks much more threatening. Then even the smallest thing can internally feel like something really big. But when you're really at peace with yourself and trust yourself, then the outside circumstances don't have as much power over people. And that's like the shift I saw, particularly in this one now, in a few of the guys in the conversation in the last few days. Just like this trust and this, like, whatever comes my way, I know it's going to be good. And even if it's not always easy, as you said, being okay with challenges.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the inside job that we like to talk about, which is like a lot of times we learn, okay, I don't feel good, I'm going to do something on the outside, and then when I achieve this or get there, then I will feel better. It's kind of like the reason why anyone does anything, you know. That's why I want to go on lots of dates, because when I find that perfect partner, then I will feel great, you know.
Yeah.
And we're willing to endure a lot of shit to get there, you know. We're willing to put up with a lot of failure to have the success business or whatever.
Yeah.
But part of that at some point has to be recognized that nothing, and it's so cliche, but like the outside stuff won't change permanently what's on the inside, that there will be, and pretty much every entrepreneur can relate to this, of having a big win or even having more success than they ever thought was possible. And then a week later, it's like, it's Monday again, you know, and I got this fucking meeting to go to, you know? And so It's recognizing that like the things that you're chasing on the outside to try and make you feel better on the inside, it can help short term. It's like a painkiller. It's going to numb it for a while, but it has to be an inside job at some point. And that's where like the guys who come to us, at some point, I think the penny has dropped. They recognize that, I've been doing this for 10 years, 15 years. It doesn't really work anymore. Must be something more.
Yeah. It's not about losing the ambition. It's about just changing the driver behind it. And I think having a great relationship, having a great business, building something makes life more fulfilling and more meaningful. But the nervous system state, your internal state, decides how you experience all of that. Mm-hmm. Because how many guys did we get to know that on paper they had everything and they were still struggling to enjoy it? And I always like to give this example in Bali when last year when I was here after a difficult period in my life, I was sitting at the perfect sunset with a coconut in my hand and I couldn't see the beauty of it. I just couldn't because my internal state was whatever, sadness, my nervous system was in fight or flight. And no matter the good things that happened on the outside, you could have given me 10 filters over that sunset. It didn't matter. It's like if your state is not at peace and not in a good place, you can sit at a dinner table with the most amazing food that you have ever seen, all your favorite dishes, and you can smell it. But if you have lost your sense of taste, you can't enjoy any of it, and it doesn't help if you put more great food on the table, because if you can't taste it, it's for nothing. And
fundamentally, you can't enjoy it no matter how much more you add.
Exactly, and same with, if I make that next deal, or if I book the better hotel, or whatever it may be. It's nice if you feel good internally. Then it's all amazing. You can enjoy great things, but without that, it's like the balance of the two.
It's more food on the table when you can't taste it anyway. Yeah, for sure. So the experience itself over the last 3 weeks, let's chat a little bit about that, because we kind of took the guys on a bit of a journey, and this was our first time doing this format. We've obviously run a lot of retreats before, but having the space and time was a new kind of experiment of like how we space it out and how we run it and how we manage the journey and the growth of each guy. Because like from behind the scenes perspective, like for us as the facilitators, we're of course like we have a plan, but then often the plan changes because the way we think things are going to be is not how they end up. And that's pretty typical in most business situations as well. What's the phrase of the saying? Man plans, God laughs, Mm-hmm. Or we plan and our retreat participants laugh, basically. So let's talk about some of the different like kind of key couple of exercises or the key couple of moments that we had. So we started off welcoming everyone into the house on like a Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon, went for a nice dinner, and then Monday we kicked off our program. So you mentioned before about this like stacked morning we had with like morning meditation, breath work, and then gym routine, personal trainer, really going hard, and then sauna, ice bath, relaxing, having a protein shake, back to the house by 10 o'clock and into the personal development program, some breath work sometimes, deep exercises, and then lunch with everyone, and then co-working in the afternoon, sometimes body work, massage, IV.
IV drips, like the vitamin infusions.
Exactly, yeah. So let's talk about weekly program. Obviously, we had one or two little other special things we did, but let's talk about the routine and also some of the different exercises we brought in.
I think what I would add to that is that was like the shared kind of group program that everybody did together, but we also wanted to bring in some individual stuff. So usually how it works, even me being most of the time in Berlin, I'm doing the one-on-one breathwork sessions with people. You do most of the group coaching, also at the retreat. And I'm then very carefully observing while you're doing the group coaching, what's going on in every guy, trying to read between the lines, and then using that information to take that into the one-on-one sessions I have with everybody. Everybody has one-on-one session a week that includes an hour and a half of coaching, and then a 1 hour breathwork journey. So it's a great mix of having the group circles with the guys in a different energy, and then also have like really every week, very personalized coaching and breathwork session that can go specifically into the topics that every man shares, and maybe has a bit more time and space to go deeper into what moves him. As well as you said, the massages will be in the afternoon. and a few things like paddle and stuff. So that was a bit more flexible. So I loved that combination of the set program as a group together, then of some of the one-on-one experiences, and then also what I loved to see was the natural kind of evolution of them becoming so close friends that they started to just do things together in the evenings, organize fun activities together, and just also enjoy the lifestyle here in Bali. So, yeah, I think it was a great mix.
Yeah, totally. Regarding the program, like in the morning, my goal with that was to kind of get as much content active so that you can kind of take it away then in the afternoon. So each person, of course, had a very personalized and different journey within the group container. But there's certain common themes that tend to show up in general for founders and entrepreneurs. And so there's kind of certain buttons we can always push and kind of count upon to really get the juice flowing in the group. And so one of the first exercises that we love to do is what we call the 5 chilies of authenticity, which is, if you think about when you go to like, some kind of Asian restaurant, they usually buy the dish, depending on how spicy it is, they have a number of chilies. So 1 chili being mild and 5 chilies being like, it's going to blow your head off probably. And so we've adopted something similar for the exercises in our retreat. And we do this exercise where basically each guy gets to share about a problem or challenge he's facing. And he gets to share about it from 5 levels. The first one is like basically what you would share at a cocktail party or a networking event. So not very deep. The second one would be an old acquaintance or someone you used to know in the past. So you have a personal relationship, but not really deep. The third level would be like a close friend, so someone you trust. The fourth level would be then a trusted therapist or coach, so someone that you can kind of confide in confidentially. And then the fifth level, which is kind of the really interesting one, is what someone would say to themselves if they were being really honest with themselves, like looking in the mirror at home alone. So what that does is, very early on in the retreat, is it sets a standard or a foundation for showing where is everyone at and what would they like to bring to the group. And of course, everyone chooses their adventure. There's no pressure, there's no forcing anyone to do anything. But at the same time, we invite people to kind of lean in and almost guiding them into how to even feel what it's like to be truly authentic. Because most people would say, yeah, I'm authentic. Yeah, I share openly.
Honest.
Yeah, like I'm authentic on LinkedIn, and in the comments on other people's posts. But they actually, like when we start to get the group and everything, we start to see how authentic can they, or how much authenticity can they actually access. And if you're sitting at home and you want to try it, like particularly for levels chili 4 and 5, the way I describe it is like earlier on in the chilies, it feels like very rational. It's like I'm up in my head and it's kind of very flippant. It's very like, yeah, everything's good. It's mostly positive. There's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of vulnerability. It's just like, yeah, everything's good. Yeah, some challenges, but it's life. And as we get more and more vulnerable by chili 4 and chili 5, the way I experience it in my body is like I move from my rational mind and I kind of bring my energy down into like my kind of chest or my belly. And I let go of the mind and I allow myself to share, kind of almost like, imagine being on a roller coaster and you put your hands up in the air and you just allow yourself to be carried. So I allow whatever wants to come through to come out, and my mind is watching what I'm saying going, oh, wow, interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. So we're removing the filter of the mind and we're allowing the truth to actually flow out. And this is something that particularly for like people like myself who've been a full-time people pleaser for a lot of my life, it can be a really scary thing to do because we're removing the safety mechanism. We're taking off the handbrake and we're allowing anything to come. And it could be something that people don't like. It could be something that makes me look stupid. All of the things. And yet that is the freedom of being able to share that truth and to actually be received and for it to be welcomed and to be seen in that is the liberation. And that is a level of depth that most people have never accessed in their life. Never mind sharing it, to be seen and received and met in that. Because the scariest thing to do is to share openly, vulnerably for the first time and to have someone close up or reject them or laugh at you or whatever.
And probably that's also an experience people to some degree did in childhood when you sharing things, when you don't think about repercussions yet, and then you get punished or you get laughed at, and then that gets stored in the body. Maybe in a past relationship you had somebody who would use your vulnerability against you, and then you close down and then you live like this and you limit yourself in how much you feel. And I think this time it was actually really profound, this exercise. Even at the end, after 3 weeks of the retreat, guys were still talking about this exercise because, as you said in the start, people think usually, well, I'm honest, I'm authentic, and they don't even know that they are not fully authentic until they do this exercise. And it also, it's such a smart exercise because in usual daily life, we're not thinking about going that deep, but then doing that in the group setting, funnily enough, they're all high performers, so they also want to do it right, and they don't want to sit there and everybody's doing it and not do it. So that then can help to override the fear of sharing the things. Plus, it's a safe space with people they trust already. But then I would say after level 3, it becomes like, okay, I have to say something more now. So I have to dig deeper. And that's like kind of the flipping point that most people never go below 3. But I have to go one more level, and I have to go one more level. So I have to dig deeper. And suddenly, as you said, people are afraid what comes out of their mouth. And it sometimes even can get emotional. But that's also such a trust-making moment because, as you say, you are not laughed at, you are not judged, people are also not neutral. They're actually celebrating each other for doing that, and that became a very fundamental moment in this retreat.
Yeah, totally. I feel like authenticity is like a very human, like it's a fundamental human thing that we all crave and seek, both to be able to share openly ourselves and also to receive that from others. And I think a lot of the way society is structured is, we can only go as deep as the most shallow person in the group. And if we're surrounding ourselves unknowingly with people and environments that don't support that depth, then just by default, we won't spend much time there. So I think having that space for guys to come and to really feel what it's like to go there, it can be liberating. Of course, it can also be challenging because then it will also highlight all the areas in your life when you thought you were being authentic, but actually it only supports you being like a 2 or a 3. And so part of the takeaways from the guys from that and what they're taking back into the world is how can they sit down with the people that are important to them and, lead the way, and to maybe don't go 5 right off the bat, straight off the plane, but like how can they open a bit more and also build the trust. And what I usually find, and what I've found and the feedback we get as well, is once one person has the confidence to lead and to be vulnerable and to be more authentic in that share, typically it gives the permission to the other person to do it too. So, you could be at a cocktail party and, someone shares at level 3 or 4. And you never know, the other person might also be craving that interaction as well. And everyone's wearing their masks. No one's being honest. But then what kind of depth does that create? Of course, they might get uncomfortable, you might get rejected, but you also might create a brand new deep connection that you never thought was possible. So really inviting, even if you never end up making it to a retreat, to really explore that for yourself, to say like, what's my actual deeper kind of truth on this, and to see what it would be like. Just try that, see what happens.
And how good it feels and how rare it is. We actually got a real-time proof for that when I think the day after we did that exercise, we invited a group of other founders who weren't part of our program for an evening dinner, breathwork, and we intentionally created a little exercise where we put together people in our retreat with new guys coming in who are also open-minded guys, of course, but they haven't been part of this. And we basically did an exercise where it was also about sharing something personal, and we let our guys in the retreat go first to lead the way and like feel into how honest they can be with now a stranger that is not in the safe space. And it was a bit of a trigger exercise for some, for sure. But you remember the reaction 5 minutes later? What did the new guys say?
Yeah, they said like, I feel so met, and I've never like stepped into a space and felt so like kind of touched by this level of sharing. Like I'm really blown away.
Yeah, so basically, Pete just asked into the round, how was that for everybody? Somebody wants to say something. So it wasn't even necessary for somebody to speak up, but then 3 of the new guys like raised their hand and just said, I'm blown away how quickly I was able to connect on that level with somebody never experienced anything like this before. So great, that space you have created here. And it just shows how, especially for men, I think, how rare it is. And again, maybe not even realizing that it's not there until they experienced it in that moment.
Yeah, of course. We had a nice time at a retreat space up in Ubud as well. So we got to take the guys up for some like a nature getaway for the weekend, and again, kind of phones away and just like really present in the jungle, which was a beautiful time and a good mix of Ubud activities. It's kind of like a more open-minded spiritual place. So we did some different fun workshops and some great dinners out and stuff. It was a really nice time. But the second week, then we had a really cool exercise, which is the boundaries exercise. And again, similar, where we get the guys to sit up and to basically share a boundary, or we call it like a no. So 4 stages of no. And they need to share in 4 different scenarios how they would actually set a boundary. So, it could be a low stakes situation to start. There's someone random on the street, right up to like a threatening situation where someone is trying to harm their loved ones, we'll say. And really guiding guys into feeling, finding, and expressing a boundary or a no from a very deep part of them. What we found is that, and this is typical for other retreats as well, like some guys find it very easy to do the simple no, but accessing the deeper power is difficult. Even though they think they're accessing their deepest no and a strong, powerful one, the group actually is reflecting, hey, I don't know if you're there yet, keep going, And then meanwhile, there's other guys who are very easy to go into anger and power, but then they find it hard to find the balance in the middle. So they either go from 1 to 100, so they'll just be very pleasant or they'll go crazy. So finding the nuance in the middle was also a very interesting and valuable exercise for the guys as well. Because what it does is it allows us to feel into and find the areas of our life that we're actually preventing ourselves from really holding our sense of self and our boundaries with the world. Because it's a skill and a practice to be able to feel and notice the times when someone's crossing a line or we're crossing our own line. So that could be a no to other people, but it also could be a no to ourselves. How disciplined and in integrity are we with ourselves? So by training and practicing that no, it's such a simple thing, but the impact and the ripple effect of that for all the guys is friggin' profound.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see how some people think it's a bad thing to be angry ever or to show it. And I used to be one of them. And we had like some heated discussions about some of the guys priding themselves never to get loud, never to raise their voice. And it's not that I now disagree. I still think in the very most situations in our life, it's not appropriate to scream at somebody. But it's more about testing what it feels like to go to the maximum and having access to it. For example, if somebody threatens my family, I want to be able to go there. Hopefully I don't have to. But then it's almost like it becomes fun, especially if you have never done it, and then you find a new edge in yourself and you explore a new energy, and it feels powerful. And then be the person who uses that energy and that power in a good way. And I think there was like this discussion, or I think some men are afraid of their power. They're afraid to access or to unlock that anger of maybe what could happen if they did, how they're perceived. But I think the more they realize this is more about the embodiment exercise of it, to feel it and then be able to play around with it and enjoy it, suddenly made it then a bit more fun. And I think what we saw through all these embodiment exercises towards the end of the retreat was just like if you look at the energy levels of everybody now, it's just a completely different story from when they arrived. Mm-hmm. And I think these embodiment exercises that might look or sound a bit weird in the start, for some people who've never done it, really have a great result in the end.
Yeah, I think, particularly nowadays, there's a lot of talk of toxic masculinity and how men are bad. At least that's some people's view. And here's the way I see it. I think power by itself is not inherently bad. The misuse of power is the problem. Yeah. And I think that's where those two things have been tied together, such as men, masculinity, and, misuse of power. And I would actually say it's very important to be able to access power in the right moments. And with great power comes great responsibility. We want to know when's the right time to turn it on and to use it in a benevolent or a positive or helpful way that has awareness of other people, that I understand the impact of my actions, that I am compassionate and empathetic. So it's not about being a rabbit. The rabbit looks cute and nice and would never hurt anyone, but even if it wanted to, it couldn't. But then the black belt in, jiu-jitsu, he can also be peaceful and kind and nice, but he can also mess you up if you do something that's actually going to harm or hurt other people. So what we want to do, and especially like, obviously guys come in from a place of like, I want to feel more grounded, I want to feel more energized. Anger and power are two of the most charged up emotions. They carry the most energy, we'll say. Now, if I'm someone who says I'm not an angry person, or I don't like to go into that, then I am by default suppressing my power. I'm holding down a lot of energy. Now, that doesn't mean I don't feel anger, because anger is still happening. Every time someone crosses a line, there is an anger response that is created. But if I've learned through my experience in the past that it's bad to feel anger, and I've learned to push that shit down, then in those moments, I'm just not feeling it, but that doesn't mean it's not there, creating a response that my body has to work hard to suppress. So usually what happens is when people tap into these like deeper, powerful energies, it's not that they turn into a crazy person. It's that they actually go more grounded because their system isn't buzzing all the time, being on trying to hold back this energy. It's like a volcano that can explode because it's like holding all the lava inside. Once we can kind of allow that lava to move and know it's okay, then it can just be at peace. It's a mountain at peace now. That's the kind of way I see it. So that's really one of the like hidden secrets of this kind of work that you kind of need to experience to believe it. Might sound and look a bit weird.
It's not always so obvious in the start.
Of course,
like
no.
some of when we did our first retreats and I had no retreat experience, some of the stuff you pulled out of the hat, that was like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, shadow improv and stuff, and I was like, oh no. But then it always turned out fun and good, and so it's
Trust the process.
And even in itself, just to do something you've never done before. Many of these guys are 35, 40, have seen the whole world, done everything. But this is like a whole new thing, and almost like in a playful way sometimes, bringing back some of those feelings that have been stacked away for many years.
Yeah.
So, and it's important for a man to be able to play and to have fun, and we often lose that in the game of business and responsibility.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the final pillars of the retreats is lightness, because the lighter we go, it balances out the polarity of the depth. So the lighter we can be, the deeper we can go. So some of the best spiritual teachers in the world, they're funny bastards, you know what I mean? They're very funny, as in it doesn't have to be all heavy all the time. And I find that infusing, the deep work and the emotions and accessing these deeper things that we're talking about, balancing it out with like a fun paddle game or shit chat at dinner and all these things, that is the dichotomy, that is the balance. That if we just do play, then it's all shallow. If we just do depth, then it's all heavy. So we need both, and that's really what we like to bring in. I think that's also in our personalities as well. It's like, it doesn't have to be so heavy all the time, And that brings us to like, in the final week, we do this final exam. So maybe you'd like to share a bit from your experience, how that is for you, kind of watching
the end game,
the end boss.
It's actually not an ideal description for what it is, but it just kind of happened because it started as a joke.
Yeah.
You said the final exam, but it's basically, I think, when you are at your very best as a coach in your element, and I just love to watch it. It's basically every person gets. You usually say 30 minutes, but it usually ends up being 60 minutes per person.
Or more.
Yeah. But it's worth it. So basically we have collected a lot of data over everybody in those 3 weeks. What are their patterns? What are their deepest challenges? What is the root cause of it? What do they really need to experience within the group to really liberate and free them from something that is really holding them back? And that can be anything. It can be relationship stuff, can be business stuff, can be childhood stuff, whatever it may be. All the data collected will be used in this moment, and often in these kind of exercises, I don't know, some people have maybe seen Tony Robbins doing life coaching stuff where then people suddenly get emotional on the spot. It goes a little bit into that direction, but we do it in a trusted group, and we often then include the people that are at the retreat with the person who is in the spotlight to help this person go through this exercise, sometimes embodying certain people in their lives that have to be there, sometimes to show support. And it's, how I can describe it, it's a deeply touching, emotional, and for many, I think, life-changing experience. I know, big word, but I think it's really a moment to remember. And I think I have shed a tear in more than 50% of
Wow.
all of these final exam moments with all the guys over the last couple of retreats. So, yeah, it's amazing, and I always love to witness.
Very nice. Yeah, for me, it's fun. It's like peak aura moment. I'm kind of like fully dropping in and kind of listening for what is the insight or the medicine that this guy needs right now. How can he leave this retreat feeling fully complete? No box unopened, you know? No loops left open. So it's really kind of like naturally the process takes care of a lot of the insights and people feel really good by the end. But this is kind of like the final cherry on the cake where all of the stuff that's been happening throughout the week for each person, which is vastly different, we get to really create this beautiful moment of them being kind of met and seen by the group and really allowing them to close whatever box is still there. So yeah, for me it's super enjoyable to lead them. I feel like that's kind of really when I'm at my most creative and intuitive and trusting, and sometimes I'm saying or doing things in those that I can't rationally explain, but I just know it's what's needed. That's my own kind of inner compass guiding that. And it's a very fulfilling process also for me to see the impact of that, you know? So everyone's a winner. You know, the group enjoys it, that person gets a powerful experience, and I have a great time. So happy days.
And it's also very interesting to see how empathetic the guys are with one another. And even the ones that are the least emotional kind of guys, sometimes it's easier for them to access their emotions or even have a bit of a cry when they watch the other person, because they're not in the spotlight and they are not feeling that people are watching them and they try to suppress it. They're like just being there with that other person, and then it just happens. And yeah, it's a super interesting process. I don't know how well that lands when somebody listens, how well they can understand what's actually going on. But if you're in it, you'll understand, and you'll just be very grateful that you were a part of it.
There's something about a retreat where you get a group of people coming together. They spend a lot of time together. They go through all these exercises we talked about: authenticity, boundaries, sharing their personal things at whatever level feels comfortable. And then by the end, there's this strong bond and this trust. And I think we have to recognize that we as humans are wounded in relationship. And so we need to heal in relationship, you know. And the group creates this field of trust, and being seen and witnessed is the antidote to shame. So shame is the deepest, darkest emotion that most of us carry, which is the deep question of, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Do I deserve love? Am I valuable? And to share something openly, or to be seen in something that we maybe never believed we had, or that was even possible that we would ever do that in front of a group, and to be so received and welcomed in that, for me, just completely evaporates the shame. And that is almost like a big boulder that's been sitting in the belly for maybe our whole life. And for that weight to be lifted is so liberating. And I think there's something about these end of retreat experiences that are very, you can like feel it in the room. It's live, it's real, it's human, it's unscripted, there's no plan, and it's just unfolding. And it's just what I would call process. There is a process emerging. We are facilitating and supporting that process. We're supporting someone in their process as they choose their own adventure and how deep they want to lean in. And at the end, there is a completion, there's a closing, there's a liberation. And that's really why we do it. That's the good stuff. So yeah, kind of talking about our three main lessons or insights from this retreat, this 3-week Founder House, as our kind of final point in this. The first one for me is, in terms of what the guys received from this 3-week experience, is, I heard it consistently from all of them, is it kind of created a new measuring stick or foundation, like, or baseline for what the quality of life could be. So these are often guys
areas.
Exactly, yeah.
Lifestyle, friendship.
So, you know, guys who've actually had a lot of success in business already and have maybe got the beautiful apartment, nice car, they do all the things they want to do, but now there's an opening to a new way of living in all areas, as you said. It's like a whole new world, you know? It's a whole new level of life experience that they didn't even know existed, which is super powerful in terms of routine, lifestyle, the level of depth in connection, just how they can live. It's new possibility, and that's really beautiful to see. Even if they take 5% of that back to their usual environment and change a few things, then they're already winning. The second thing then is this 3-week process, I think, really allowed all of the insights to really land and integrate. So occasionally at the end of a retreat, we'll have someone who has had a lot of, big insights, but they haven't really had the full time to integrate, and they leave and go straight back into work the next Monday and back into their old environment. And they don't give themselves the chance to kind of let it all land. And so I think what really this 3-week process allowed was the time for these new insights and the new versions of themselves to really just, soften in and integrate, so that by the time they're leaving, like the feedback now from the guys who've already gone back to Europe, is everything still feels super solid. And the energy that they had in Bali is kind of carried through now. And they're starting to infuse their lives with that as well. So I think for that reason, if someone has the capacity to do a 3-week trip, it's the special sauce, And then the final part then is the brotherhood, which is most guys not knowing how much they missed, like having deep connection, and to be able to have this balance of sharing openly, but also then the banter and the fun, and how we can often have that when we're younger and we just kind of lose it along the way. We get all serious and it gets all fucking heavy, and there's all this responsibility and people who rely on us and people expecting things from us. And we kind of forget it, especially for the guys who become fathers then as well. It's even more. So the liberation and freedom that comes from having that, not necessarily as going around partying or something, but just being able to be and have fun and to work on yourself and do it in a group and to be seen in that, it really sets, again, a new baseline for the possibility of connection that's available in life.
Yeah, I think I think we said it all. Just one thing I want to say one more time is how impressed I was to see the energy of the guys in the last few days after the retreat, and just seeing the compounded effect of thinking back how they arrived on day one and looking at them now. It's really just amazing to see. And also what I thought about yesterday was, at some stage they were all skeptical. Should I do this? Every single one of them, it wasn't like, oh, of course, let's go. I want to do this. They had to be convinced. They had their doubts. They were not sure. And just now seeing the difference, and basically more this energy of I'm so glad I did this. It was so worth it. And already talking about the next retreat, I think we can talk about everything we did and all the tools, and some of them will resonate more with you before you have experienced it, some less. But the actual result of it, when we look at the guys now and how they feel and what they already implement into the real life now, is the answer to whether it was worth it.
And so we're going to close out this episode with a couple of words from the guys themselves, from the Founder House. And I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you in the next episode. Bye, guys.